Okay, good afternoon again, everybody. This is Stephanie from BiblioCommons, and I want to welcome you to our third session today, Rapid Fire Reader's Advisory Sessions with Nancy Pearl on taking Reader's Advisory online. And it's perfect because this session is about writing the 140-character annotation, so how to be short and sweet. In our last session, where we talked about book talking skills and taking them online, Nancy really emphasized the importance of not talking about plot. So now we're going to have some tips, I think, and tricks about doing that as well. So just a little bit of information. We have some librarians with us in the Hangout. We have Jenny and Greg, and so you might hear us and see us as we come. I did remember to turn on the Q&A app this time, so that if you have questions, just please use that to type them in, and we'll be able to see them and answer them. We're going to take about 10 minutes to talk about this skill, and then we have a 5-minute exercise. So for those of you who were part of an earlier session, you had to do the 5 books and then write kind of a little summary with them. And so you don't need to do that this time. This time, you just need to be thinking while we're talking about these 4 books and which one you're going to choose. The Three Little Pigs, Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, and Hansel and Gretel. So that's your challenge for a little bit later. But so just to get started, let me introduce and welcome Nancy Pearl.
It's great to be here. It's great to be able to talk about all these things that I just absolutely love. So happy to be here. So Stephanie, you want to just dive right in with 140 character?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have any preliminary stuff you want to say?
Well, so one of the things that we talked about, again, is that because plot takes up so much space and that it can go wrong very easily, we had found there's this great thing that went around Twitter recently that was called Explain a Film Plot Badly. So you and I picked some examples of those. So let me just share this. We'll just put them up quickly. Oh, can we see it? There we go. This happens to be by a great author, too. So I love this because sometimes it's really hard when you don't see the picture. So a young woman is tricked into helping a gang of violent, illegal immigrants. And there's a picture of Pocahontas. I think that's quite funny. We have, let me see, let me bring up another one. This one. Oh, can we see it? Reclusive weirdo and his mutant employees lure children into his factory with sweets, then dispose of them one by one. That is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And then one more that we had picked. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. And this was the original one that started the meme. It's a clip. Let's see if we can bring it up. There we go. Of an old TV Guide, I think, entry. It says, transported to a surreal landscape, a young girl kills the first person she meets and then teams up with 3 strangers to kill again. And that was the description of The Wizard of Oz.
Sounds very noir to me, doesn't it?
So in part we had picked those because they're in a very, very short period of time. There are 3 great examples of someone really kind of completely giving a very different perspective on a story. And I suppose about how much we can shape what somebody would think about a book and what a book is about by the way we choose to describe it.
Yeah, and I think that we should look at 140 characters, which is, the tweet size, as the outer limit of it, and it would be even best if we could condense it. I think one of the mistakes that we make is thinking that if it's short, it's easy to do. We sort of think, oh, 1,000 words, that's going to be so hard, I've got to do that. But really, when you come right down to it, choosing the correct 140 characters is really much harder than writing 1,000 words, because you have to pick and choose exactly what words are going to express what you want to say. And I think that when people are reading these descriptions, what they're looking for is a clue as to whether or not they would enjoy the book. So they want a word, or they want to find a word in those descriptions that they can connect with. A word that, Greg gave the example before of Ready Player One, of dystopia. He used the word dystopian. I think dystopic, I think was the word. And what that does is signal to people that is people who like dystopian novels, whether they be plague novels or asteroids hitting the Earth novels, whatever, and then what comes after. That would include everybody who loved The Road, to the most thrillerish of the dystopian novels. Having that word there is a way of cueing people that this would be a book that they would be interested in. And so, a good exercise when you sit down to write your 140 character review description is to think about, what word is absolutely necessary. When I do this in a workshop and we're talking about writing annotations, you can start out with 100 different descriptive words and then gradually take away the ones that aren't really, really necessary to get down to that great word or few words that describe the book. Somebody did a review, a description at a bookstore here in Seattle of Station 11, the new Emily St. John Mandel, and she started it by saying, "I love a good plague novel." And I thought that was terrific. I don't love a good plague novel, but I appreciated that that's how she described it for the people who would. So the people who like Justin Cronin's, 12 and whatever the first book in that trilogy was. Yeah, The Passage, which was a book I absolutely loved too. That would be the cue for them. So it's not easy to do this, but boy, is it rewarding, and is it helpful for your patrons to have that there.
And so I know the challenge that you wanted to do to kind of expose how difficult this could be, and also how important, was that you were interested in having us each write 25-word annotation of a well-known fairy tale, which is why we asked people to think of Little Red Riding Hood, The Three Little Pigs. Now I've Hansel and Gretel. One more, I've forgotten the fourth one.
Cinderella, did we say?
Cinderella, we said.
Cinderella.
So I'm going to give Jenny and Greg just a chance to kind of think about that. But of course, I did this ahead of time, Nancy, because you asked me to. So I put that as the comment on the copy. I chose The Three Little Pigs, and I chose the Paul Galdone version. And so let me just bring it up, and we can just see it. So there we go. So it was actually, this took me the longest out of all of the exercises that you gave us, Nancy. It took me the longest to figure out. I had to keep chopping it down. I think my first one was about 60 for a relatively simple story, of course. And I finally got it down, I think, to 24, maybe. So this was how I thought I could describe The Three Little Pigs. A tale of ingenuity, trickery, and how the small can outsmart the mighty. And then, for me, what I think is really important, I at one point had taught, and I was surprised at how many kids have not ever heard the original version of the tale, where the first two pigs get eaten, and the wolf gets, I think, turned into soup at the end. So I said reading the original, which is more gruesome than the version most children are told now, is essential. Because I think you really do need to know kind of where this story comes from. It's really kind of a part of our cultural lexicon.
And so here's what I said, Stephanie, about The Three Little Pigs, because I wanted to do that one too. I said, and I'm going to read it because I didn't send it to you fast enough. Straw, wood, bricks. Three little pigs have a big decision to make when it comes to building their houses.
Ooh, that's good.
I mean, that gives you a whole different sense of of what that book is about.
Mm-hmm. So Jenny or Greg, do you have one that you would like to share?
Sure.
All right, Jenny, put you up.
Okay, here we go. Brother and sister, lost in the woods, lured to a gingerbread house where a witch intends to eat them. Will she succeed?
You are a teen. You work with teens.
No, I don't. No.
You know, one of the things with teens that always makes it so interesting is to end with a question. That's such a good way of, with book talking, that's such a good way of doing that.
And now, Greg, do you have one that you want to share?
Man, do I have to follow that? That's going to be a tough one to do. But I did, oddly enough, I picked Red Riding Hood, and I said it's a grisly noir tale about the dangers of talking to strangers and the importance of knowing your family and friends.
Good.
And so I think the thing that is interesting, again, about this exercise is that if we think about having to write things very, very short, you know, we all have now our sentence, right? And that everything else that we talk about, you know, where we have more space, whether it's in a blog post or whether it's in, you know, a comment, could be not about the plot. And then we don't even have to answer our own question.
Right. I mean, I think that's the great thing about starting with something like a tweet or this 25-word description of the book, is that that's our basis. As you said, Stephanie, that's our basis for everything else that we do. You know, then you can build on it. Then you can add more adjectives. Then you could, if it's in a blog post or a comment that you want a little longer, you can add more adjectives. You could add more description. You can do all that other stuff that builds on that 125-word or less description. So for me, what I see about all of this reader's advisory online that we're talking about is that it's all of a piece. It all fits together, that everything that you do in terms of a particular book you can use and reuse and tinker with and just send out to ever wider audiences in different ways. I mean, librarians we're the original sort of eco people. I mean, with us, nothing is wasted. Everything, whether it's picking up a book and looking at it, you know, we can use the knowledge we gain from that, whether it's, you know, an exercise of describing a book in 25 words, annotating a book in 25 words or less. That's just the first step, an important first step in everything else that we're going to do with that book.
I think those clues and signposts are so critical, though. You know, I mean, I don't want to pick up a Lee Child knowing that it's really graphic. You know, I'd rather, there might be things about my readers and myself that I'm actually not interested in at all. And
Right.
So being able to do that in that 140 characters is also critical.
Yes, and I think that, you know, that Greg's use of grisly noir tale when he was talking about Little Red Riding Hood alerts readers to, if you'll forgive the pun, the grimness of that story.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been a big believer in the concept of the elevator pitch, is that you only have about, you know, just 15 to 20 seconds to really capture a reader's attention, and so you need to make the most of that opportunity, whether it be on the floor with a patron or online with a Twitter or a Facebook feed.
But that's what's so interesting, is that my enthusiasm for my books is so clear, but translating that to an online medium is, you know, definitely a switch.
And I think, Jenny, it's something that we all need to learn how to do better. I think that it isn't natural to us, and I think that it's a question of taking what's best about the in-person discussion and making sure that we communicate that. I mean, your voice, Jenny, certainly communicates your enthusiasm for the book.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that will, and this is if we can communicate online as we're doing now, rather than rather than writing it down. But just talking with smiling as you're talking makes a big difference in what the listener hears. And we forget that. We forget that a lot. But if we want to make these books sound good, if we want to convey our enthusiasm, we should smile while we're talking about them, which we do naturally, but we sometimes get very self-conscious about it. Oh, I'm on camera. I have to look more distinguished or more serious or something like that.
They don't teach camera skills in library school.
Not yet, but I bet they will.
I should.
So, Nancy, what are some other tips that you might have for those of us? Again, people who are in the audience, your challenge for this session, your exercise was to write a 25-word annotation of a well-known children's tale. Nancy suggested the Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, Cinderella, and the Three Little Pigs. So, obviously, again, one of the key things was to talk about the plot in very limited piece, and that's where the 140 character piece kind of comes from. We talked about some other techniques in the last session about really making sure that you're thinking about when you're describing a book that you are talking about why you enjoyed reading it or what wasn't appealing to you as a reader. You said the phrase, make sure that you're talking or writing or reviewing about the book that you read and not the book that you wish the author had read. Do you have some other kind of tips for us about, again, writing those really great kind of short annotations?
First of all, it takes a lot of practice. I mean, I think that's absolutely necessary to say. I have met very, very few people who can just sit down and write a great annotation the first time, a great 25-word description. I think that